people in the Talmud, particularly a friend of Josephus that he mentions in his work, also called Jesus, interestingly enough, his best friend, which makes me suspicious of a lot of things. A rabbi called Jesus ben Gamala, who is killed by the Zealots at the time of the uprising, at the same time that the murderer of James is killed, another high priest called Ananus, and Josephus covers this in the war, the killing of these two priests. One his best friend, and the other this one responsible for the death of James. And I think the writers of these documents would have been very familiar with those materials about Jesus ben Gamala and others concerning Levirate marriage, because the point is that this Jesus ben Gamala was going to marry the daughter of another high priest, a well-appointed high priest whose husband had died, but she hadn't finished the Levirate marriage period or whatever it was called for some reason. I forget what the whole issue was in the Talmud. And there was some bribery involved because these families were rich to get the Herodian king or the Roman governor or both to permit this marriage of Jesus ben Gamala against Levirate marriage provisions. So there are some things in the Talmud, the Jewish document concerning Levirate marriage, that may have been used to produce these other understanding of things. In any case, in the Philip episode, there is no Levirate marriage involved because Philip died childless. Now it turns out that the other husband of Herodias wasn't called Philip. He was actually called, as I told you, if you look in your Josephus genealogies, and I have the genealogies in the back of my James book, Herod. He was actually, if you want to get down to it, he was Herod. You know, he was not only Herod by his name, but he was Herod by the family name Caesar, like having a Caesar who was Caesar. And he's not a very important character, but he was her first husband. And it's he whom she divorced. And why was everyone after Herodias? Because first of all, it turns out that Herodias is the sister of Agrippa I, who is the king I told you about. I know this is getting confusing, that Claudius appoints. Both Claudius and Caligula were brought up with Agrippa I. He's the grandson of Herod, but he's the grandson through the Maccabean bloodline. And the reason they all want to marry her is she's carrying the real kingly Jewish bloodline still, because it's still descendants of the Maccabean family line, even though it's on the female side. That's the reason they all want to get in touch. I don't want to get into, I don't want to be crude. Why do they all want to get into or get in with Herodias? Because she's carrying the Maccabean bloodline. She's the only one the Romans really recognize as kings. The Romans are real snobs, and they only take them. So Agrippa I, Agrippa II have the Maccabean bloodline, even though it's very highly diluted. I have all the genealogies in the back of James for that reason, that you can follow those lines. They're very important. And the superficial reader wouldn't even pay any attention to that. Reading Acts, what do you know about when Paul meets Drusilla, for instance, and Felix? And he does in about chapter 24 of Acts or something like that. And then the author of Acts, as I've told you, is hardly forthcoming, says, Felix came in and his wife Drusilla, who was a Jewess. That's totally dissimulation. Why? Because the one thing Drusilla was not was a Jewess. So he said, well, how do you dare say that, Professor Eisenman? How do you dare? Because I have read Josephus, and Josephus says that Drusilla gave up the religion of her forefathers in order to marry Felix, that she abandoned the Jewish religion, so she wasn't a Jewess anymore. I don't know if she ever really was, given that she was an Herodian. It doesn't give us the important things of who Drusilla was, that she was an Herodian princess. Now, if I were going to write it, I would say she's an Herodian princess who abandoned the religion that her family had adopted. That might be an accurate description of who Drusilla is. You follow me? So that's why I say the book of Acts doesn't want to tell you those things, that's all. The authors know it, they just don't want to tell you that. And they are very successful in keeping people ignorant of what's going on, because they don't want to show Paul involved with Herodians necessarily. Somewhat they do, but they don't want to show Herodians in a negative light, put it that way. And for instance, when Bernice and Agrippa come and interview Paul after Drusilla and Felix did, they're all brothers and sisters. He doesn't make that clear in Acts. Drusilla is Bernice's sister. Agrippa too is Drusilla's brother. None of that is made clear in Acts. And you say, well, so what? It's very important. These people are supporting Paul, and they're rescuing him, and they're saying that that the Jews are being mean to him, that he's not guilty of any crime. Agrippa too says to him, a little more, Paul, and I would become a Christian. So all these people are Herodians. Now, read your Josephus, and you'll find that the Jews abominated Agrippa too. They liked Agrippa I, but they didn't like Agrippa II. Because Agrippa II, I tried at least to honor the ancestors' traditions, but Agrippa II was just a nothing. And they actually stoned him when he came near Jerusalem. And they barred him from the city. And the rumor was that he was having an illicit relationship with his sister Bernice. And none of this, well, of course, the Acts does show him come on the arm of his sister Bernice. But they don't make it clear, and they don't tell us that Bernice is later Titus's mistress, the destroyer of Jerusalem, and that Titus later took Bernice to Rome as his mistress. None of this do we get, that these people are in league with the destroyers of Jerusalem, that their palaces have all been burned, that that the Jews have barred them from the temple that their forefathers supposedly built, and so on. None of this is brought forth. These are just Drusilla, a Jewish. Well, that leaves a lot unsaid. In any case, so that's what I mean. If you haven't really delved into this period, if you're just doing it for religious reasons, you're just beginning, and that's why there's so much left to do if you want. So, do I feel John had reason to object to the Herodians? Yes. Do I think it's about levirate marriage? No. Do I think that's the picture the New Testament authors give us because they don't know about the other things? Yes. Do I think that they would have understood the other things if they had been presented them? Probably not. But in any case, I think the issues are divorce, marriage with a niece, marrying uncles, and things like that. And the New Testament writers couldn't figure out what John's problems were, except maybe something to do with levirate marriage. They couldn't figure it out. So that's what they put in there. Let's go on to chapter 12.